Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the WoK of Kings, where we're going to discuss chapter 8, Nearer the Flame. I'm here, as usual, with Sensei Milo. How are you doing, my brother?
I am doing all right. Really looking forward to this chapter. It's one of my favorite chapters across the entirety of the Cosmere.
I'm sensing some slight Shallan-style sarcasm from you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't like this chapter, dude.
Well, we're kind of in the same boat, so that's
okay.
Rare. So it is funny that because we have two Shallan chapters back to back, I will be taking the turn of narrating this one, and this happens to be a Shallan chapter I don't like very much. So
fair enough. I think the next one we're going to cover is Kaladin. Then I think we get into the interludes.
Fun. We can kind of reset our bearings.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if it's two Kaladin chapters. It might just be the one because we did.
Yeah, we'll see.
Whatever, we'll see. See what happens. But the interludes will be interesting. We might hit those all in one stride or break it up into like 2 weeks or something like that. Who knows?
We'll see what happens there.
We'll get there when we, or we could just do like we do with the audiobook and just skip it and go right into the next portion of the book.
I think it would be helpful for the sake of the archive of the fact we're doing the podcast to go over it. And if it ends up being very skippable, that's something we can talk about. Speaking of skippable, let's get into today's chapter. Okay. So we start off in our last chapter. Jasnah had just told Shallan, "Hey, you have like really big holes in your education. However, you have some promise. So fill those holes in your education, and you know what? You can reapply to be my ward again." She said this intending it to be dismissal, but Shallan, of course, jumps on it right away. And so she has her Thalen bodyguard boy, Yalb, go with her to go shopping for some textbooks. She goes to a book merchant. She asks for some books. We have some Shallan dialogue that is very unfortunately more like her initial conversation aboard the Wind's Pleasure rather than her Jasnah conversation, in that we're trying to see like how snippy and clever Shallan is, and it just doesn't hit for me. We get a lot of her. We're supposed to see her as like talking circles around the merchant, and
she's just
she's getting mad, so she's unleashing her wit, and which is, I understand that it's supposed to be. We're continuing to show that this is a flaw of hers, that she can't control her temper and is making things worse for herself, whatever. She gets her books because Yalb comes in and pretends to be a servant from a different book merchant, because he can see that this guy was drastically overcharging her. 40 emerald bromes, I think, is the cost of the small handful of books that she wanted, which she says was like several magnitudes higher than the cost of her trip here on the Wind's Pleasure.
It was 10 emerald bromes for the 7 books. And she, we'll get into it, but she paid a lot less than that. Yeah,
she ends up paying less because the merchant was expecting to start haggling. Shallan knows nothing about haggling. And also she's clearly a foreigner, so, the tourist markup. So the combination of those, she's able to get a much better deal, though still probably an overpay. She gives Yalb a picture of him that she doesn't know yet, but we know that she made this picture by looking into the spiritual realm, so she got like a true image of his perfect self.
Yeah, his true potential.
Yeah, so that was neat to look back on. And then she goes back to the Palanaeum. Jasnah is waiting for her because she bribed them to tell her when Shallan comes back. And Jasnah's like, I guess I'm never going to get rid of you, am I? And it was a little funny to hear, like, Shallan hears Jasnah saying, like, I'm never going to be rid of you. And Jasnah is described as having, like, a soft feminine voice, which isn't really how... I picture Jasnah's voice, whether in my imagination or in the audiobook reading.
For that one line, Kate Redding definitely smoothed it over a little bit for Jasnah.
She's like, Brando, what's going on? She's like, very well, I'll read what's on here, but Brando, you know your own character.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
I also caught a pronunciation of Shallon once this chapter. It happens.
Aggressive, like very, very clearly a Shallon. It was like
she put a hard Allen on that one.
Yeah, Allen.
But anyway, so Yasna's like, she's like, I obviously see what you're doing. That's a pretty good selection of books, all things considered. It's kind of like she's dealing with like an overly literal child who's gonna take every loophole they can in what you say. She's like, yeah, I probably should have like set a time limit on that thing. I didn't intend for you to go and immediately start trying to fill in your entire missing curriculum with books. Like you're aware you're not going to be able to do that. But I admire she obviously sees that Shallan is clearly trying to do the work. She's not just trying to impress Yasna. It's not like she just grabbed a bunch of books and is making a TikTok reel about her newest haul. Like she sees Shallan's at least earnest about it. But then she's like, be gone with you maybe sometime in the future. Yeah. And Shallan's like, okay. And then Yasna's like, wait a second. Let me just look at everything you have on you real quick. And so she's like, I see how much cash you have.
She's got $2.
She got $2. I see your stuff. I see your what's with these drawings? Why did you draw these like creatures and like random like townsfolk and stuff? Yeah. And Shallan says, just because I felt like it. And she thinks that that Yasna is going to dismiss this as being just like foolishness, but in reality, this is what makes Yasna realize that Shallan is in it for the love of the game. That she is somebody who is curious enough and like cares about her craft enough that she will spend the time and energy on pursuing things that she's interested in for their own sake, rather than just trying to get in Yasna's graces because of political reasons.
Because of the name of the game.
Yeah. And so that's what makes her say, all right, fine. I'll take you on as my ward, but we definitely do need to fill these gaps in your education. So here's where you're going to stay. Get out of here. And then that's where we end the chapter.
Yeah.
And so it's a very long chapter, despite that. Oh, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, I just want to let you know the first note that I took preparing for this was the mispronunciation of Shallan's name. It stuck out really to me so much.
Yeah. You just kind of cringe as soon as you hear it. But yeah, despite it being a long chapter, not much really happens. It's a ton of just internal rumination. A ton of time in the bookstore of the guy insulting Shallan's intelligence, and then his wife glaring at him for having insulted Shallan's intelligence. We're getting kind of a wacky sitcom sort of situation here.
Yeah, something to note: the store that. Because she had asked Yalb, like, hey, Yalb, can you freaking find me a bookstore? Because I don't know how to read. I mean, not really, but, she's like, it's like 8:30. Do you think anything's open right now? He's like, dude, this is New York. Like, freaking, I'll find you a place. And the bookstore that he finds is a Thalen bookstore, so the same nationality that he is. So that was a neat little bit of... not world building per se, but like recognizing that she asks a dude helping her out to find a bookstore, and he's going to find the one that he would recognize the most easily.
I thought that was funny. You ask somebody, he's going to try to help someone out, even if he then turns around and is like, hey, stop overcharging so much. Clearly, obviously trying to get a tip from Shallan, but he's looking out for them both in their own ways.
For the buys.
What else did you have for notes?
Oh boy, I basically, I took down a good handful of notes. So the mispronunciation of Shallan's name, something that I noticed a little bit, and I mean, this is certainly kind of consistent across my own experience as well, because, as part of my job, I do sales and construction and stuff like that. So I write like slightly legalese letters of proposal and stuff like that. But Shallan's written word is definitely a lot stronger and a lot more like logically sound
Yeah.
than her trying to actually have a conversation with Yasna.
Yes, which is something Yasna even noted in the previous chapter.
Right, yeah, right near the end. She's like, "Oh, this is good logic. Too bad you couldn't freaking tell me that when we were talking."
So when Shallan gives herself the time to think things through, she is a lot smarter than when she's just rattling things off the top of her head. Which she gets somewhat better at as her arc continues.
Yeah, I mean, as we get further away from Sanderson needing to remind us how clever Shallan is, the more kind of space that she has to, formulate ideas.
Yeah.
But we got Yalb gambling when she leaves the Palinam, which was pretty neat that we get an actual scene of that happening. Because I think I'm trying to think if we've been told in the book up until this point about how like games of chance are outlawed because like telling the future is.
I think we might have in reference to a Kaladin soldier chapter, but maybe I'm just misremembering one of the several times it's mentioned in various chapters. This might be the first mention of gambling. And of course, Yalb isn't Vorin. He follows the passion, so he doesn't care, except for as much as it might get him, arrested.
Cash. Or arrested. Either cash or arrested. He is simply incorrigible. That's the word that I wrote down to describe the scene.
He's our discount Wayne from Mistborn era 2 for the day.
Yeah, he's cheating the guards, and he said the real purpose of the game wasn't to see who won or lost the hand. It was to see who could catch the other person cheating the most, which is very very creative writing. I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's fun. I like rogue characters like that.
Yeah. And we get to the bookstore and just, I've listened to this chapter several times. I may have we'll do an episode and then I'll be like, oh, I want to kind of get some greater context to be ready for the next part. And then I listen to like two more hours. So another couple chapters.
Yeah.
And then, I'll come back. So in effect, each time that we have an episode, I'll have listened to the chapter like 2 or 3 times to prepare. And we just spend a lot of time in the bookstore. And she's like, when she comes in and she's kind of still in the mindset of like, I'm a little bit of a small lost girl and I'm just trying to do this thing. Yeah, it's not that bad. And then, she tells the bookstore owner, the authors of the books that she's trying to get, his wife goes in the back, and then he just tries to have a like shopkeeper conversation with her, like, oh, you're a young lady. Can I get you a book talk recommendation instead?
Yeah.
And she did not like that.
He does it in just such an obnoxious way. I'm not entirely sure how, so I've been in a lot of like local writing groups where people share their, weekly first drafts. Sure. A lot of them, especially fantasy, you get people kind of trying to imitate a little bit of like a Tolkien style. You get a certain kind of person who's like a little eccentric. The author, a little eccentric, a little hasn't read any fantasy book written in the last like 40 years. And is like, thinks a lot of their own cleverness. And they use the word wit a lot, maybe refer to their cleverness. They think they're very sophisticated, and you'll end up with, they're trying to write funny or clever conversations that sound just like exactly like this shopkeeper. You have like the condescension is just so dripping that it just doesn't feel real. And maybe that's just my life experience. Maybe we have other people who are, in the audience who are like, oh, well, I've had people speak to me exactly like this when they're trying to like condescend to me, and maybe that's just my life experience I haven't had. But it just feels almost like somebody's trying to write a Lord of the Rings innkeeper more than anything else, if that makes any sense. There's just like this smarminess to it beyond just the condescension.
Smarmy is a very good descriptor.
And like just because Shallan recognizes it being condescending doesn't really cut that sloppy edge off it for me.
Right. I'm going to be honest. Whenever I hear this shopkeeper, I think of the like frickin' 16-bit Legend of Zelda computer game shopkeeper with like the cap and the feather. He is asking
Shallan if she wants lamp oil, rope, or bombs.
Yes.
Morshu has just been transferred into the Cosmere, and this is his purpose.
That's the vibe that I get from this guy. And while like, so granted, neither you or I have had the experience of a young lady going into an establishment and just like asking a simple question, and the other person is like, "Oh, you're just like just a young girl. Why don't you do this other thing instead?" So
I guess I have worked at a card and game shop where I've definitely heard other employees treat grown-ass women like that. So I guess like, but there's the smarminess though. It never quite matches that level.
For sure. And
that's the part that bugs me.
100%. I'm not saying that like this isn't a cringeworthy character. Yeah. But then it would be one thing if he was just a cringeworthy character and Shallan is just like sitting there uncomfortably the whole time until his wife comes back. But
I think that would make it better because I could relate. I would actually feel bad for Shallan.
Yeah. I don't feel bad for
Yalb
Shallan
coming and quote unquote rescuing in a different way could be funny because it could be framed in a way that's like, oh, Yalb saved the shopkeeper from Shallan. You could almost maybe we're a little too early in the book to buy that, but
Shallan,
I'm just trying to come up with excuses for things ways that could possibly be different.
Shallan's wittiness and puns and her wit are just,
it's like cringe. There's no other word for it.
It's really cringe. Like, at one point,
we're in full agreement there.
Yeah, at one point the shopkeeper goes, "Oh, Brightness, I believe you are I believe you're straying into sarcasm."
Yes.
And she goes, "That's funny. I thought I ran into it face first, screaming at the top of my lungs."
And I'm pretty sure that's an interaction we have more than once across the series. That, almost exactly that kind of, or maybe it was even with the ship's captain. I can't remember, but someone's like, Shallan, polite nudging that maybe you're going a little too far. Shallan saying, "I'll do it again."
Watch me.
I'm not trying to. Yes.
So here's the thing. Like, as a person, I do not hate like the dry sarcasm thing. Like,
it just has to be done better than it's being done right in this specific chapter. It's pure execution over concept. I can find it funny. I can find it funny a lot. I don't like how it is here.
Yeah,
it's just been done better. Brando was not skilled enough to do this at this point.
Yeah, for anybody listening who like hasn't experienced this before and kind of can't believe that it's as cringe as it is, it is. In which case, really
why
raw.
are you watching us instead of reading the book?
Yeah, come on. I was going to say read the book, but then listen to it like a good Vorin person.
Yes, of course. Men should not read. That is heresy of the highest order.
I fully agree.
Speaking of
she's
reading.
Yeah.
Sorry. You go on.
Yeah.
I've got my list.
I was just going to say, and at the end of it, like you had said, even though like she's, she comes into the store and she is like kind of, pretty high on the social ladder compared to a lot of the people hanging around here, I guess. The shopkeeper 100% tries to rip her off. Like,
yeah, I mean, he probably thinks she can afford it, but even still, he definitely would assume that they're going to barter too. Shallan just has no experience with bartering.
That is true. She even like internally thinks like, I've never actually gone into a shop and bought something for myself in my life before. Isn't this crazy?
And the shopkeeper claims like that was just the initial price he set. It could be argued that he was just truly hoping she would just pay the price. But we see bartering other places in this world all over the place that she was just missing a fundamental skill that she really
especially the Thalens, they really try to strike a deal with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so he initially charges her 10 emerald bromes, which is freaking insane.
A lot of money.
A lot of money. She ends up spending essentially a quarter of that. It was 2 emerald bromes, and I think, was it 3 sky marks or something like that? I don't remember
what she ends up paying, but it's much less, but it's still a lot of money. She ends up with not much money left over.
Correct. She basically I think she spent like a third of the money that she had left, and then she also has to pay a pretty solid amount of pocket money to get back into the Palaneum to rent a reading nook.
Yes. And I don't know that it wouldn't have been explicitly commented on when Yasna was looking at how much money she had left, but Yasna definitely would have seen how many spheres that she had previously compared to now, and Yasna would have been observant enough to know how much Shallan was willing to spend on what she just did.
Yeah.
So
and she did make note of her empty sphere pouch and the spheres in the goblet. But yeah, I mean, honestly, after the shopkeeper, like, we don't get a massive amount of time with Shallan and Yasna.
Yes, which I will be addressing later. There really is not a lot that happens in this chapter, is what it comes down to.
Shallan gets back to she rents a reading alcove right next to Yasna's and is like, I'm going to be sneaky and I'm going to watch her, and if she leaves, I'm going to make note of it and do something.
Just slowly rises up behind her as she's monologuing to herself.
Yeah, Yasna comes in. She's like, if you thought that I wouldn't ask them to tell me when you come back,
do you think you're
kind of an idiot. Yeah. But she notes the books, like you said. She's like, that's a pretty good spread of books, whatever. I can see what you're doing, because I'm not an idiot, because I'm Yasna Colin. She said feminine and breathily.
Definitely, that's how Yasna talks.
Yes, for sure, 100%. And then she does go through her sketchbook. She spends the most amount of time looking at the biology sketches of the plants and animals and all of that kind of thing, and she sees it. Shallan says, I do what I want, and Yasna goes, all right, frickin' pack your bags, you're gonna sleep in my closet for a little while, and we got some homework to do.
It's where you belong.
It's where you belong, right under the stairs, Shallan. That's kind of what I had for the notes.
That's fair. There's not a lot to take notes on this chapter.
Yeah, I could have written down and critiqued every line of Shallan dialogue at the bookstore. Probably would have been an exercise in patience.
Yeah, we pretty much got there.
Was there anything else that you had picked up on?
Yeah, I had a few things.
Sure.
Not so much like things to notice in terms of a reread, but other than what was already mentioned. So the chapter title is called Nearer the Flame, which is the book, the name of the romance book that the shopkeeper suggests to her, which, if I'm remembering right, Shallan says that it was, well, first of all, it was a book that she recognized, and was about a man.
I think he had recommended to her basically a romantic book.
He recommended a romance book. She's like, do you have Nearer the... Oh, yeah, I just completely misremembered.
Yeah,
I should not be talking about this. Yeah, she's like, well, do you have Near the Flame? Which is like an angsty, like, grim Russian novel about a man who goes crazy as he watches his children die of hunger. And
good stuff.
Yeah, and so I was just wondering, so The author telling us that the name of the chapter is Near the Flame is telling us that that name is important. Why do you think Near the Flame is important in this chapter? I was asking myself that. I was trying to throw things at the wall and thinking, does this give us foreshadowing for somebody's character arc? And I thought, well, that's kind of like closest to Kaladin's character arc. He is kind of someone who goes crazy watching as he's unable to save the people around him throughout the series. I was thinking ahead to when Shallan is in the city when they're trying to get information in like Oathbringer maybe, when she's basically just being Veil all the time, and the gangs are murdering the children to take their food because Shallan has no idea how gangs in cities work.
Something tells me like Shallan doesn't have much idea of how the real world works most of the time.
But that's a very specific thing that happens several books from now. I don't necessarily think it's foreshadowing. So I'm wondering why is this the book that is brought up, and why is it that we chose that for the chapter name?
So honestly, most of the time I just figure that the chapter titles are something that sounds snappy. Nice. That is said at some point in the chapters. Like, sometimes it is very directly what it is about, like, Bridge 4 or, or stuff like that. Or like if it's a Dalinar chapter, the chapter will be called something like, Stoneward Integrity, or Adolin, Adolin dueling his first duel in quite a while in Words of Radiance, which I'm currently re-listening through as well. It's a very enjoyable book. Yeah, it's a great book. That chapter is called Stone Stance because he uses stone stance to kick someone's chest in.
That's the name of the chapter, indeed.
That is the name of the movie. So I didn't I don't tend to put much weight into what the chapter titles are unless it jumps out at me as being something that like I should look out for.
I generally think that makes sense for this book. There's just a massive number of chapters. Brando decided to name the chapters. That's not I generally don't really like he did when not books do in have Mistborn, chapter by names. The way. Yeah.
He did not do that in Mistborn.
He decided to do it here. I guess he just had to choose something evocative. It's real handy to just say, oh, this was a book in... Maybe this was a reference to some like short story he maybe wrote some long time ago. That was just the plot of this book. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. I'm just trying to slap some, middle school literary analysis on why he might have chosen this. Beyond that, this is the kind of chapter that if I was, as I've said previously, if I was seeing it in like a first draft being sent to me as an editor, I would just have a big note on this saying, it's clear that you had fun writing this scene. I get what you're trying to do. This is a huge amount of time to be spending on something that doesn't actually advance the plot at all. Please just have Jasnah deciding to take Shallan on at the end of the last chapter and skip everything else that's here. Because we go from Jasnah saying, hey, Shallan, you have a long way to go before I'm gonna take you on, while Shallan has all of her stuff in front of her. And I believe Jasnah's already looked at Shallan's art and called it meaningless. And then so Shallan goes...
She didn't see her art before. Shallan asked her if she wanted
just told
to.
Her about it.
Yeah, she was like, but Brightness, what about the art? And Yastin's like, art? Stupid.
Yeah. And so Shallan goes and does one errand. Then she comes back. She goes back to the exact same place that she and Jasnah were just talking, puts everything out again. Jasnah just looks at everything again and is like, oh, I noticed this one other detail now. Cool. Yeah, you're good to go. And so
you're hired.
I do understand to some extent, someone else might argue that, we're at it. Shallan has to do like a token bit of work before we can get from Jasnah being willing to take her on to not. And like, it's the audience is going to think this was a victory too easily won if we just go from please take me on, I met you in the Nook, to her saying, oh, I see your drawings. It's clear that you're you yada yada yada, you're free to go. But like, it is so skippable in my mind. In remembering, I abridged this entire chapter. I literally thought at the end of the previous conversation was when Yasna saw her thing and took her on. When I was remembering back about what happened. This is a meaningless chapter. It should have just been, Yasna should have just took her on at the end of last chapter with the same reasoning as she has here. It's ridiculous that we spent this long in this book on nothing really.
Yeah. No, I mean, I very much agree. I think that the 49-minute audiobook chapter.
How many pages is that in the physical book?
My physical book is in the other room. I'm sorry. I didn't think to grab it beforehand. But
let me grab my phone. I can look at the Kindle version.
Gotcha. It's not like Shallan doesn't struggle when she's working with Yasna, though. Yeah. Like once she
page numbers, that's helpful.
Once she gets into the actual scholar work, like Shallan has to shape up pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I don't think if we were discussing how to make this work better, like maybe when Yasna meets Shallan in the Nook, she does look at her art and goes, "Oh, you're the letter that you wrote. The logic is solid, a lot better than what you talked to me about. Well, you have holes in your learning," which she still recognizes at the end of this chapter.
Yeah,
but,
we could have literally just had her see like a corner of one of the drawings sticking out just as she's leaving. She just frowns, she grabs it, she looks at it and is like, okay, now go get these books and go to my hotel. Like we could have literally just had like a few sentences more than just like cutting and pasting their conversation from here and sticking it on the end of the previous one. I don't even think you don't have to do much doctoring. You could almost just copy and paste it and it would be fine.
The fact that they end up in the exact same spot, like it, technically speaking, yes, it's a neighboring reading alcove in the freaking Palaneum,
it's the
whatever.
Same location. If you're imagining the picture in your mind, even if it's a neighboring cove, they're going to look identical.
Put it this way: if this was the Lord of the Rings adaptation, this scene, the bookstore scene, would have been cut. They would have talked in the reading alcove, and then it would have ended like we're saying. Like
if this was Peter Jackson, Yasna probably would have just seen her picture when they were in the palace talking to Teravengian. We probably would have skipped the entire Palaneum. Capsule probably wouldn't have even existed.
Friggin' Tom.
To be fair. Also, the chapter is like 11 pages in the physical book, it looks like. That's a lot of pages. That's a lot of pages.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good Lord. But yeah, no, I agree. Most of this chapter is absolutely pointless, and it just makes me not enjoy Shallan and her.
Yeah, I can see that here.
Scoundrelness.
Thankfully, this isn't the last Shallan chapter, and she does indeed continue to be my favorite character in the long run. I'm trying to think if I had any other notes for this chapter. While I'm thinking about that, was there something else you wanted to mention?
Oh, I was just going to say, to be fair, there are definitely Kaladin chapters that are pretty cringe, that he's just kind of being super sorry for himself, that I do not enjoy listening to.
Much less of that after this point, though, because he's going to finally start doing stuff.
Especially as we start to get some Kaladin flashbacks.
Now, some of the Kaladin flashbacks are kind of Chainsaw Man-esque in how much they're just kicking the character when he's down.
They really enjoy doing that to Kaladin.
Yeah.
My boy Peter Parker.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I really had anything else to note aside from, I was going to bring up the gambling, but we already talked about that.
Interesting that Yalb doesn't have the phrase like mirror in his vocabulary. He said, "It's like I looked into a polished plate, it is."
Yeah.
You know, because likely speaking, he would not have experience around mirrors. Maybe like calm water or like a polished piece of metal.
Yep.
But, you know, a mirror that Shallan would be familiar with is not something that a Thaylen sailor would likely be associated with. But other than that,
they have mirror fabrials to do that kind of thing for them.
hard light fabrials.
Yeah, I think that's all on
fabrials go real hard. Yeah. No, that's pretty much what I got too. Yeah, the next chapter is going to be real interesting.
Mm-hmm. What's the name of the next chapter? I got it. 1 second.
Stories of something.
Damnation.
Really?
That's what I got. Stories of Surgeons is the one after that, which is we go from a Kaladin current day into a Kaladin flashback, it looks like. Then after that is Droplets, which is another Kaladin chapter. Goodness, we got 3 Kaladin chapters.
And then interludes.
Yep. Well then.
Now, to be fair, Near the Flame was 49 minutes, 12 seconds.
Yep.
Damnation is 17 minutes, 46 seconds.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Stories of Surgeons is 16 and a half. And then Droplets is 20. So
yeah, this is so in another style of editing, we would have just had a flashback in the middle of a longer chapter. Like all of that could really be counted as like one chapter.
Yep. Then after Droplets, we go into the interludes, which are Ishik, Non-Balat, and Glory of Ignorance, which I would assume is a Taravangian thing, but this feels too early to be a Taravangian chapter.
I feel like it might be.
It's probably a Zeth chapter. Let me see.
Oh, the first time we also get everybody kicking Zeth while he's down and just longing for death.
Yeah. Zeth is in the friggin' Hotel California.
The darkest Zeth chapter. I even having read Wind and Truth, I think this is either the darkest or it's either darkest or second darkest Zeth chapter that we get, I think. Poor Zeth. I really feel bad for the boy.
Yeah. You know, he's just one of those characters that gets beaten around a little bit.
Yeah. A lot.
I think at this point, you know, especially with his perspective at the beginning of the book, he kind of slaughters like a whole ton of people. So it doesn't granted, I haven't listened to Wind and Truth, and you know, I have definitely learned a lot more of his backstory, but at this point in the book, the Zeth that we're familiar with just murdered like a crap ton of people. And I don't listening to that interlude doesn't make me feel super duper sorry for him. But you know, we also haven't really gotten used to him being kicked around in this book. I don't know. It might just be you know, we haven't heard from Zeth in quite a while. When we look at Kaladin, he's been just getting beat. And he's going to continue to be getting beat. And then we just come off of Shallan being Shallan. And then Zeth is over here like, hey, I'm a slave. And this guy that owns me now is not a cool guy. Who ends up, you know, I mean, we'll get into it in the interlude, but he ends up getting killed because he owes people money. And then Zeth just gets picked up by a new group of people. So
yeah, it definitely helps to know from the future that his people consider murdering somebody to make you like the lowest scum on earth. And Zeth would do like anything to avoid ever having to do it.
People just keep making him do it.
People just keep making him do it. The worst horror he ever feels in his life is when he knows that Nail knows who he is and that he can make him kill people and that he's going to make him kill people like deliberately as a tool.
Nail's nuts, man. Please don't make me kill another guy.
And as with Yasna, Nail rises up slowly behind him and says, "Are you sure?"
Oh no.
Yeah. Any last thoughts on your end before we break for tonight?
I think I have said as much as I need to say. I'm just reading through the chapter overview in the Coppermind, see if there's any characters mentioned that I'm gonna talk about.
Blorpaglipo was the main character of a side story that was only released as a Patreon reward PDF 10 years after this.
Which, the near the flame page, it is only ever mentioned here, and the wiki says this page is complete, contains all knowledge we have on the subject. So never mentioned ever again,
which is a random thing mentioned, random title mentioned. Just a random thing mentioned. That's what you got to do when you decide to name your titles.
All of the scholars are ladies, I believe.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, except for maybe the Shin one. I think the Shin one was a dude.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that is pretty much it.
All right. Well, then thank you for joining me again, my brother.
And absolutely. Thank you for hosting.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you next time as we go to episode 10 and chapter 9. Damn.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one.